So we've come across a stack of documents that lay out this just incredibly audacious blueprint to completely rewire global finance. And the wild part is, it's not about inventing new rules. It's about finding, and you could say, weaponizing old ones, ancient laws, treaties, and claims that have been sitting on the shelf just gathering dust for centuries, and plugging them into a system designed to generate a massive daily revenue stream.
And when I say massive, I mean it. The goal laid out in these papers is frankly almost unbelievable. They are talking about an institutional revenue stream of $5 to $10 billion every single day. So yeah, this isn't just some small tweak to the existing system. This is a plan to build an entirely new one right alongside it. Okay, so how on earth do you even get there? Well, the first part of this blueprint is all about what you could call legal archaeology. It's about digging through the archives to identify and reactivate these ancient legal authorities, laws that were never actually repealed, just, well, buried and forgotten over time. And this isn't just a random search. The approach is incredibly systematic. The blueprint actually identifies and categorizes the top 20 of these so-called ancient authorities into these really powerful groups. We're talking about everything from centuries-old maritime and admiralty claims to foundational land rights and unrepealed international treaties, the whole shebang.
Here is a perfect example. This is a treaty from 1778. Now, the argument here is simple but incredibly powerful. Because this treaty was never officially repealed, it legally trumps later laws. It's what they call a foundational legal instrument that's just been sitting there, waiting for someone to dust it off and put it back to work.
Right, so how do you turn a 240-year-old piece of paper into a modern cash machine? You do it by modernizing its authority. The plan lays out something called a Treaty Jurisdiction Arbitration Court, basically a private, neutral venue for settling huge global disputes that completely bypasses the slow, complex, and often political national court systems. Which kind of begs the question, right? How did these incredibly powerful laws get forgotten in the first place? Well, the documents have a name for it: codification masking. The idea is that these laws weren't erased. They were just moved around, renumbered, and tucked away in highly specialized legal codes until, for all practical purposes, they just vanished from sight. And this timeline here shows you exactly how that works. You've got a law established with clear protections way back in 1834. Then, by 1926, it gets moved into a specialized part of the U.S. Code. It's still on the books today, but it's been buried so deep for nearly a century that it's effectively invisible to almost everyone. So now, let's get to the why behind all this. I mean, to really get the proposed solution, you first have to understand the problem it's trying to solve. And these documents, they don't pull any punches. They frame our entire current financial system as a structure of financial bondage.
Just think about the language of traditional finance. You know the drill. It's a whole system built around proving you don't need money in order to get it. You have to pledge your assets, lock up your own capital, and put everything at risk just for the privilege of participating. The whole system is designed around restriction.
The blueprint really boils this down to two core problems. The first is what it calls side-by-side collateral, which is a fancy way of saying your own assets are held hostage, completely useless to you. And the second, of course, is the constant threat of foreclosure, which the documents bluntly refer to as a form of legalized confiscation. And to really hammer this point home about bondage, the authors make a pretty provocative comparison. They pull up a 1941 Justice Department circular on involuntary servitude, and they argue that modern debt functions in a very similar way, as a trap, a cycle of obligation that's nearly impossible to escape.
Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? This is where we get to the real engine room of this whole blueprint. It's a technological fix. The documents introduce this completely new type of digital reserve asset they call mathematical gold.
Now, the papers are very, very clear on this. Mathematical gold, or MG, is not like Bitcoin. It is not for speculation. It's designed to be a foundational reserve asset, a way to enable transactions and provide the backing for funding without ever being spent or transferred or put at risk. This table, which is straight from the source agreement, just lays out the difference so clearly. With traditional collateral, your asset is handed over to the lender. With MG, it never leaves your wallet. And that means the risk of foreclosure, it just disappears. It goes to zero because nothing is ever actually pledged. And here's the kicker: no debt is ever created. Your asset simply enables economic activity instead of securing a loan. It's a total paradigm shift. This whole thing operates under a brand new framework the blueprint calls mathematical jurisdiction. And the idea is pretty profound.
You replace trust in institutions with mathematical proof. You don't have to trust the bank, you just verify the math on an immutable ledger. The record itself is the truth.
All right, so now let's connect the dots. Let's see how these two big pieces fit together, the ancient legal authorities and this new financial engine. This is the synthesis, where mathematical gold is used to monetize those forgotten laws on a massive institutional scale.
So here's the three-step model that's designed to be absolutely irresistible to banks. First, just holding MG frees up a bank's capital because it has a zero risk weight, just like physical gold. Second, that newly freed up capital acts as a new reserve base, multiplying their lending capacity by 10 or even 12 times. And third, at the exact same time, that same MG position is generating fees by backing trade finance. It's one asset doing three jobs all at once.
So what's the bottom line for a bank? The documents project a compounded annual capacity return of over 64%. And that's just for holding the asset, not even spending or selling it. An incentive like that, it isn't just a proposal, it's a magnet.
Now, with a system this disruptive, you can't just walk into New York or London and expect a warm welcome. So the blueprint lays out a very specific, very clever go-to-market strategy that's designed for speed and, crucially, to avoid the established, slow-moving financial centers of the West.
The strategy is basically to go where the existing system is weakest or most resented. It targets emerging markets and the BRICS nations, countries like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa that are already actively building alternatives to Western-dominated networks like SWIFT. The whole goal is to become indispensable infrastructure by solving their problems first, all without ever asking permission from the old guard.
And this whole thing really boils down to a pretty foundational question. Is an asset that gets its value from pure math more durable than one that gets its value from a government decree? I mean, if value comes from provable scarcity, not a political decision, could it actually be more reliable in the long run than the currencies we use today?
And if this model actually works, well, it just blows the doors open to some fascinating possibilities. The legal authorities we've looked at are just the tip of the iceberg. It really makes you wonder, which one of the hundreds of other obsolete laws just sitting in an archive somewhere will be the next one to get modernized into a billion-dollar product?